Nerd Word Order back with another 31 Days of Halloween review. This one I'm really excited about. Of course, first, let's introduce the panel of, I won't call us judges, I don't know who we are.
And we're barely people.
Yeah. Nerd Word Order.
I'm Ian.
And I'm Jake.
Then, together we watched Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Right off the bat, say this is a horror comedy, so obviously it's going to be a little bit different than previous films. Although we did also review Trick or Treat, which has some comedy aspects in it as well, I would argue.
Yeah. I'd say this is definitely heavier on the comedy side than it is on the horror side. Other than the horrific scarring that these hillbillies have to go through.
And then that immediately takes us into spoiler territory. This is one of those movies where I kind of feel like there's nothing we can say that's great about this without spoiling it. Like, everything is kind of a spoiler because the movie itself is a perfect twist on the typical formula for horror movies. Right from the very get-go, you're like, all right, yeah, this is what I think is going to happen. This is what I think is going to happen. You know, you're expecting this horror movie setup, and then immediately it flips. And that's great.
And I like that breakdown happens very early.
No time wasted.
Right. The typical horror movie is maybe the first 15 minutes, if that, and then it immediately flips.
Mm-hmm.
I like that jump right into it.
Yeah, and that's perfect because we know that with it having horror elements, obviously there's going to be a smaller runtime than a typical movie, so it has to be able to keep up with that formula. You know, something happening every so many minutes. If it's a Friday the 13th or a slasher film, a body's got to drop every so many minutes, and this does it, but in not that way.
Yeah, they do definitely.
Well, yeah, they do definitely drop bodies. Bodies are dropped in this movie. And let's talk about that. So, Ian, I want you to just bring up, kind of break it down for us. What makes bodies dropping in this so different than your other typical horror movie?
It's so ironic. It's, these, and like we said, there are going to be spoilers. Essentially, these kids trying to, in their eyes, defend themselves. And in doing so, they need to take up arms. And they are just so terribly unlucky with that, shit happens. Someone steps out of the way and people die. Not the intended person, but it manages to happen to them quite a lot, actually.
And it's all purely that happenstance, accidental situation that causes it. It just makes it so much more funny. That's definitely why the comedy level is way over the top in comparison to the horror in this, because if it wasn't bad enough for the fact that you feel bad for these characters and they already are kind of funny characters, to pick two more comedic actors, I feel, to play the hillbillies, Tucker and Dale. So with that already, and then on top of that, you just have more humor just in the way these kids are dying.
That, and it was pointed out to me, and feel free to hate me for saying this, because
if you watch the movie,
if you've seen Always Sunny in Philadelphia, if you enjoy that, Chad in this is just the embodiment of Dennis.
The one thing that I can say about it that hasn't been said yet is there's a subplot, and it's a love subplot. It doesn't feel forced, and that's something I really enjoy.
Yes.
I mean, it felt like two characters naturally progressing through meeting and knowing each other, all while these terrible things are happening, and even though it was in such a short amount of time, it was still natural-esque.
What's great about that, I love that you brought that up, because I almost brought it up while we were watching the movie. What's great about that is the fact that Ian, I believe it's you specifically, mentioned that, it's a story. And I sat there and almost immediately started, and like all stories, it's about love between a man and a woman. And I mean, technically, yes, girl. Hillbilly meets college girl.
That takes a really dark turn when you watch the movie.
Yeah, it really does. Actors in this are worth mentioning a little more. Some of our earlier reviews, we've brought out specific actors. And this one I want to talk about Alan Tudyk, who plays Tucker, because he's played a lot of things, and this it really adds to the kind of range that he has as an actor, I think. The one I pointed out to you earlier that I don't think you'd known about was his role in iRobot. He actually is Sonny the robot and all the other robot faces for that entire movie. So he's got that. He's got Wash from Firefly, and he's got this goofy character Tucker, and he's just perfect at it. Like I genuinely feel that he is that hillbilly who's just annoyed by how much people treat him like a hillbilly and how he's actually a pretty level okay dude, and it's just people being ignorant and stupid to him that sets him off. That makes all the scenes where we do have Tucker and Dale together that much more hilarious. From getting pulled over by the cops.
And sorry.
Go ahead.
And talking about tipping genres on their heads, it was cool that the protagonist that did see the most screen time was the goofy best friend rather than the confident
Yes.
male, presence.
And as a larger guy, I think it should be mentioned that he's a bigger guy. Like the hero who really steals the show and gets the girl in the end, he is not your, classic good-looking chiseled man. He's a fatter hillbilly with a big beard, and as he says, he's really stupid or dumb as a box of rocks, but he's got a weird brain, and that's what helps him out. I thought that was great, just throwing that little detail in there, because they could have done a lot of different ways to make it so that Tucker and Dale have some edge or some ability to survive the situations that happen, but the instantaneous recall of information I thought was perfect.
I was almost worried throughout that movie that everyone would die, that not a single person would walk away
Yes,
from it.
and it's easy to believe that. Easily, this movie has one of the more unbalanced, like, just ways they go about killing, and just the whole system to killing is so unbalanced and so weird. You don't know who's going to die and when.
No.
It feels like anyone could die at any moment.
There were a couple where I was watching and I was like, it'd be really funny if that happened.
Yeah, and you knew it was gonna come, but it felt like it was more about it'd be really funny if someone did that, not about the specific person. What do we think about that second half of the movie plot twist there? Because as we've mentioned, this is about hillbillies. We've got the group of college kids, and the group of college kids start going after the hillbillies after being led by the guy you specifically mentioned, who reminds you of Dennis. Do we think it was just a little too over the top and stretched to have the whole backstory of him being part hillbilly?
I think that part, yes. I think the whole, not just hillbilly, but I hate to say it because I hate putting the spoilers out there. Having a murderer father,
Yeah.
that was. I don't think that was over the top. I just think that it being, I hate hillbillies. Hillbillies are the worst. Oh, I'm half hillbilly.
Yeah.
Like it seemed unnecessary.
It seemed unnecessary. But at the same time, I guess we almost needed the hillbillies killed his parents thing. Like it was a good enough motivation. I get that, motivation. My parents died this way. Very manufactured, but obviously it needed to be for the sake of having the story. But it just felt like they switched and were like, you know what? Let's make the most just stupid, because this whole movie is about miscommunication and inconvenience. Let's just keep adding to that.
Quite so.
Quite so. Any characters that we didn't like or just didn't feel like needed to be in it?
No. I thought there were some points where I wasn't sure on the sheriff, but after a certain point, I was fine with the sheriff being there and understood his role more than it just being a throw-in type thing.
Well, I was waiting for the sheriff to come up more. I mean, there's a little bit at the very end where they're looking at the newspaper, and they show the sheriff, and Dale points out, he goes, "Isn't that the sheriff?" And they immediately switch to something else.
Yeah.
It makes me think that the sheriff was intended to have more, maybe?
Maybe he was intended to have more, or the possibility of maybe they're trying to hint at a sequel or something. I didn't know really what they were doing with the scene, but yeah. I definitely remember the scene you're talking about. While we're still on you, Jake, any scenes you felt just didn't work? Just any part of this movie where it's just like, that doesn't work with the rest of this?
Well, it was a weird transition into Dale going into fight mode. Like, where Dale was like, all right, I'm going to go get the girl back. It felt like a shift from the initial, oh, these kids are killing each other, we're scared shitless, like, what's going on, into, and I guess that's supposed to be the growing moment in this
Yeah,
movie.
it's supposed to be his growing building moment, but it's clumsy. It doesn't feel like it was done the right way.
It turns into almost a cheesy action movie for about 2 scenes.
And it doesn't help that as soon as he starts running, it immediately changes from night to day. That
Yes.
doesn't help.
So you get this scene of him suddenly, he's got the confidence, he's got the determination, and things like that, and that's great. To all of a sudden, he spent so much time building himself up. It's a whole different time of day. The girl could have been dead. She, anything like that. And then there's no payoff with it. I get what he was saying, how it's just for that 2 scenes, and maybe from a comedy standpoint, that was the intention, but I just felt like that's a bit over the top. Like, yeah, the welding mask and all that looks cool. The problem is, this movie, it managed to do something that really irritates me. It puts something on the cover that it doesn't deliver in the movie. And specifically, if you look at the cover and like the preview picture, I think they show Dale with the welding mask and holding everything, and we never actually get that.
No.
Because even in the sequence, he immediately just switches back to Teddy Bear Dale, and all of his moments of badassery are pure coincidence. College kids, do we like the deaths? Were they funny enough for you?
I thought they were funny and creative, yeah.
Yeah, like the only problem was the 2 spears. I thought that was maybe just a bit much, having 2 stick-based deaths.
The first one, I thought definitely we could have done without. The second one I liked.
Really, the second one?
Liked the second one.
Okay, fair enough.
I think the first one was better. I enjoyed the sudden realization that he wasn't being chased. It made it a better death than the second.
Yeah.
And I feel like there needed to be at least a couple more of those sequences. I know we're supposed to go with the idea that some kids in general will fall in line and follow whatever their friends say. I get that. Or some people will act crazy in a certain situation. But it really would not have taken much for any of these kids to just sit there and be like, all right, well, they're not acting like crazy psycho killers, and my friend's there. Why don't we just stop and take a moment? But they don't. They never.
They tried to at one point.
Try to, sort of. But even while they're trying to, there's other people, other kids from the same group trying to stop that.
Yeah.
And I think there were too many college kids. I think 2 of the college kids didn't even have lines. They were just there to die.
Yeah. There's a couple of them that just are pure body fodder.
Right, and I think we could have cut down on that a little to make it a better movie if we're nitpicking.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Is it's hard to really pick a lot of negatives with the movie. I feel like we have to nitpick. And maybe to some extent, unfortunately for us, is that we've liked all the movies we've done so far, so nitpicking is all we can hope to do to really point out negatives. But it's not, I don't mean that as a bias, which it is, but these are good movies. All of these movies that we have reviewed, and Tucker and Dale along with them, these are all great movies that we recommend you give a watch. That's why they're on this list.
Now, granted, in comparison to what we've done so far most of the stuff that we've reviewed is scary horror. This isn't scary horror, in my opinion.
No. I do very much feel like it is an October watch, though. I feel like this is the kind of movie once it gets to the Halloween season, you throw on for a good laugh. And I feel like it's almost the perfect in the middle, because the month of October and this 31 Days of Halloween, I knew was going to be kind of a little bit of a trying thing, because you want that balance. You want classic things that you expect there. You obviously want to do scary things, but you need things that appeal to other people. Right. Just as we have Halloween cartoons and Charlie Brown Halloween every year, of course we need the horror movies. So I like that Tucker and Dale is that real balancing point. I feel like this is the dead center middle of what Halloween, horror, October, all of that should be about. Overall, what do we think of this one, guys? Tucker and Dale versus Evil, what's it get?
I loved it. It was my first time seeing it. I would probably give it an 8 out of 10. 8
out of 10? Jake?
I'd definitely give it a 9. It's a step up from the regular, everyday kind of horror movie.
Yes, and I definitely agree with that. Before I give my number, this movie definitely does everything it can to try to trick the audience, to change things around, and to make you have fun in a situation where clearly fun is not the intended, thing that's supposed to go on there. Everything is humorous to an extent that it doesn't feel forced. It's organically humorous because from some extent you could go back, watch a bunch of horror movies, and if you take out the moment of you actually seeing the killer kill someone, you could easily believe this was happening in any of those movies.
Yeah,
It's a plug and pull formula that I love. And with that in mind, because it's so different, I'm gonna go ahead and give this one a 8.9. Not quite the 9. I'm gonna give it 8.9 out of 10 because it's almost deserving of that 9. But it's not, again, it's nothing that is completely genre breaking or crazy. It's just genre breaking in the fact that it throws things on its head. And if you like this video, guys, of course, give us the thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, thumbs down. Tell us why in the comments. Thanks for watching, guys.